a rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this beautiful land, but that beautiful, a rich man's world.
Hi, and welcome to the first episode, actually. I was about to say another episode, but the very first episode of From Trauma to Love, the show that supports you to understand how to overcome trauma and find you and how to love your life as a result. I'm Clary, I'm also known as Fairy, and in today's episode, we are going to be discussing language and its impact, particularly on children. We'll be discussing the ins and outs of violent communication. And as always, I offer an opportunity for listeners to hear more about these topics by visiting thefairyshow.com. So our guest today is David Galbraith. David is, let's see if I'll get this all right because there's a lot here. David is a former ranked professional MMA fighter who has now turned business person. He is also a coach, an artist, a mentor to elite level athletes, artists, business people, entrepreneurs, and also children in one of the UK's top child development programs. And David is here to talk to us about violent communication and language and communication in general. So hi there, David. Welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi Clary, thank you so much for having me. It's a real privilege and honour to be here. So yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity.
You are welcome. So to get started, I wanted to hear a little about your past, specifically where you grew up. You know, what was life like for you? Really just sort of what led you into your career and the kind of experiences I think that you had in childhood that really fed into that.
Well, initially I was born in an area called Drumchapel in Glasgow. Now, statistically, Drumchapel is one of the most impoverished areas in the UK. So it's like in the top 10. Like if there's like a rank, but it's really deprived. And then I moved from there when I was about 8 to a place called Yoker, again another very deprived area. And with the being brought up in those environments, it was obviously normal to an extent for me. With hindsight of being an adult and experiencing other things, you realise that, you know, being brought up in these environments, that the challenges are normal to you, but they're actually can be quite, extreme and traumatic for the adults and the children and the families who are living in these areas. There's big challenges for me through the education system. I experienced a lot of violence growing up, physically, mentally, language-based violence. Although I wasn't actually aware of it, the language side of it, the physical violence side of it was very, very obvious. Especially, the message in schools is, don't hurt, don't do violence. And however, that was easier said than done. And obviously, it's a big thing that the schools are still trying to tackle. Is the mentality and where it's coming from.
Sorry, I was just going to say that it's something that I always found interesting at school as well, that idea of them teaching about respect. We used to have these things on the back of the door that this is how you respect people. And yet I personally had never experienced those things. So it was like knowledge that was coming, but the actual experience of them just didn't sort of match up. So it's interesting, like you say, how, you're taught these things in school, but actually the experience of them can be, completely different.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's one thing that I, like some of the talks and the workshops I do in schools is have a program called Steadiness, and that's all about, and not before we take care of others, we should take care of ourselves. And as coaches, teachers, mentors, people who are in a position where, we've got the responsibility of nurturing, coaching and teaching children, you know, it's very important that we as individuals are okay, and you know that's something that I coach, something I'm an ambassador of. I've been in a situation where I've not been okay, and I've noticed things about myself that could be better, because we're all capable of making these mistakes as well. You know, and that's like, you know, one of the reasons why I was really intrigued about coming on to the podcast with yourself, because is you know, if I can share any like knowledge or any experiences or any of the tools that I use to you know, to support kids with and support, you know, people who are working with kids, then
So
you
tell
know,
me,
it's a
what
great
was it like for
opportunity.
you at school? Like, did you have like support in school with, you know, as you were growing up? Like, what was that experience like for you?
School was very difficult for me. I now know as an adult that am dyslexic. I'm not just a wee bit dyslexic. I am like the in the testing scale, I'm like one below severe. I'm not severely dyslexic. You know, I can function, but how I learn is very different. I've also learned as well as I get older, like I'm ticking a lot of the boxes for ADHD. You know, again, these things weren't noticed. It wasn't obvious enough, I don't think. Or, you know, or maybe just, you know, things have changed in terms of diagnosis and the stigma attached. But I was really struggling in school. I was a very sensitive child actually as well. And, you know, if I I was being punished for not being able to deliver the 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 standards expected in the curriculum. You know, I really took that to heart, and it had quite a high impact on me, because I wanted to have positive relationships with people and schools. And to be honest with you as well, I had some great teachers. Like, that's the thing about teaching, like you don't always see, you know, that they're kind of like superheroes in a sense, where they're like they do things behind the scenes to protect you and look after you, and they don't look for any credit. Most teachers don't anyway, and they're doing it for pure reasons. It's quite a selfless job in a lot of ways. So, you know, when I talk about these experiences, we only know what we know when we know it, and you know that's just, you know, down to knowledge and personal experience. But school was very difficult for me, and when I was, you know, being punished for my lack of understanding, or you know, just where my talents were, it wasn't the teachers, it was the system that I felt that I was struggling with, the curriculum itself. I when I was then, you know, punished for not being able to do it, it was more beneficial for me to become oppositional, because it felt better to be aggressive than what it actually did to, you know, be a shell of myself or feel vulnerable. So particularly aggression was a solution for me. And we all know, well, most of us know anyway, when someone turns to aggression, it's normally because they've ran out of options.
Wow. So would you say that the kind of trauma that occurred from there, did that feed into your sort of career choice, do you feel? Or like, how did that sort of, let's say, how did I guess that trauma manifest in your life that, you know, that sort of led you to the path that you're on now? Or
Well, there was,
where on?
yeah, well, and you know, there was the challenge I had was a lot of kids in the area that I was living in were facing the same challenges. Things were difficult in the street, things were difficult at home. You get into school, things are difficult in school. You know, there wasn't much like rest as such. Now, you know, when I say things were difficult at home, they're really difficult at home. And again, like, you know, my my parents, particularly my dad. My dad's the best man I know. You know, he's been an amazing role model in my life, and someone who I aspire to be like. You know, and again, but you know, at home they only knew what they knew when they knew it, and you know, it was manifesting itself as, you know, it was, you know, in the street. If you know, if we were outside, kids in the street were going through the same thing. You know, you would, the term that's used, bullying, I don't particularly like that term, but I was definitely being targeted. I was quite a different kid. I was quite a sensitive kid, and you know, it was more desirable trait to be physically aggressive, to be like what could, you know, be perceived as the most dangerous force. So there's advantages to that as well. So I was attacked multiple times regularly. It was happening a lot from a young age in the streets. Older people, I was attacked by, you know, boys, by girls, by people my own age.
Wow.
And then as soon as we started getting into the teen years, particularly, that's when, you know, weapons, well, there's weapons involved before, but it gets at this more serious age, you know, testosterone's kicking in, we're becoming adults, you know, people are experimenting with drugs and drink, and you know, the level of crime's going, you know, it's taking that next level. So for me, particularly when things came to a head, when I was about 17, 18, things started to escalate, and uh, by my own behaviour and that of others in the community as well. And I ended up in a situation where when I was 19, I got stabbed 6 times. I got
Wow.
stabbed in the neck. I got stabbed in 3 or 4 times in the head. I got stabbed in the hip. I was in an operating theatre for 17 hours to reattach a severed nerve. I was nearly paralysed from the neck down. I was nearly dead, obviously.
Gosh.
And it was a group of people who I knew in the area, who like friends of mine who had done that. And but they had it really tough. Like they like, the way I see it is like things are even more challenging for them than what it was for me. And
Wow.
there was definitely a sense of that, and you know, that's part of the reason why you know, maybe happened that way. So at that point, I was in my bed for 3 months with my neck. I had a drain in it, to drain out the fluids, and I was
Wow.
just in my room for 3 months. I couldn't go out or anything like that physically, but mentally, you know, I was just in a room just thinking to myself, like, what am I going to do? Like, like for me, like one of my reactions was revenge. Like I wanted revenge on them. I wanted to get them back. You know, I was very angry. I felt very vulnerable. And to be honest with you, like, you know, the policing system has its pros and its cons. In this situation, they felt that it was a gang situation, and on the face of it, it could look like that, but I'm a human, they're humans. You know, it was kind of like there is a term in the police system, um, you know, that's used. I'll maybe not use it just now because it's got bad language in it, but you know, there is a term that's used particularly in that situation, that, you know, it's seen like, you know, it's dehumanizing people. But that being said as well, though, like the justice system worked for me in a lot of ways as well. I got really lucky in a few situations, as I'll explain in a minute. That then, you know, led to me dedicating my life to training. I was like, one, that's not going to happen again. Two, I'm going to become the best possible version of myself. Like I'm going to become the best at violence. Like it was like a fire was lit. It was life or death for me.
And did you feel that was in terms of like protecting yourself then? Is that where that sort of
Yeah.
stemmed from?
In terms of protecting myself, and you know, although I never I never got into training like MMA with the intention of like, using it to like hurt anybody or anything like that. But I did, you know, have the intention of getting revenge on those people, which I never done. Because I got so far into MMA, I looked up, opened my eyes, metaphorically speaking, and you know, I was doing well for myself in it. I was like, I'm starting to create a business. I'm fighting on TV. I'm in the newspapers. You know, it's a really positive thing. I've got a lot to lose. And I decided, I was like, you know, I looked at it from a compassionate point of view as well. It's like, you know,
Well,
nothing good is going to come from me, you know, going into a revenge situation, because that just means like I'm just perpetuating that and like feeding into that, you know,
So
that
what sort of
mentality.
like age range would this have spanned over? Like how old were you around this time? Like when the incident had happened and then you making the decision to dedicate your life? Because I'm thinking you'd said there about like when you started to create your business. So I'm just wondering like how, you know, that age, the years between then, what sort of age
Well,
range was that?
shortly after that, although I decided I was getting into MMA and stuff like that, it wasn't an instant fix or a magic wand. Things escalated, you know, very seriously after that. You know, I'd been through a lot of trauma as a kid. That was a big traumatic event in my life. You know, before I knew it, I was getting in fights with more and more serious people. Um, if somebody like made a hint of a threat at me, I would have, you know, I would have escalated it. So, you know, young guys fight. It's like it kind of is part of growing up, and violence can be, you know, having a persona like that has benefits to it as well as cons, obviously, obvious cons. But like I ended up in a situation where a guy attacked me one night, and he was a good bit older than me, and you know I was putting myself out there, kind of like I am just now, but in a way that it was you know it was more young guy, you know, trying to impress girls, I wanted to be liked. I wanted to connect with people. That was my real intention. Like I wanted to be liked. I wanted to connect with people. I wanted to build relationships. And my understanding of that was, you know, like like obviously protectively, like, you know, people shouldn't be able to mess with you like physically. And, you know, and well, in this situation, go back to the story. A guy attacked me. He's a good bit older than me. He was like 27, maybe 28. I was about 18 at the time. It was not long after I got stabbed. And he was quite a serious guy, you know. You know, him and his pals had cars and stuff, and you know they were involved in organised crime at quite a low level. And it just clocked me one night, wrong place, wrong time. He didn't like the look of me. Obviously, the guy had his own issues as well as myself. We're in the same boat, you know, and he knew of me. I didn't know of him. Attacked me, and we got in a fight. And you know, it was a tough fight, and I had a wee bit of skill, and I got what you would, you know, call the better of him in that situation where he was more damaged than I was. And you know, that was, you know, obviously that's a really difficult thing for someone to go through, um, particularly from the social status that he created. And his friends actually targeted me one night, and there was three of them again showing up in cars and stuff. It was getting quite serious, and they gave me an absolute kicking. I was walking my niece around to the shop. She was only like 6 at the time. I seen these guys coming. I says, "On you go back to the house, pal. I'll be back soon." Just, you know, like diverting their attention onto me to send her back. Give me an absolute kicking. Me and the state of mind I was in at the time, I went into the house. I grabbed a samurai sword. I went out into the street, and you know, we were in this altercation in the middle of the street, and I'm waving it around a sword. And you know, after that, you know, obviously police were called, stuff like that. It was actually a police helicopter out chasing me, and I at the time, like, I had like my hair bleached blonde and like blonde spike hair. I shaved it all off. I disappeared under the radar so that the police couldn't find me. But during that time, I tracked all the guys down one by one. I got each and every single one of them. I used threatening language. You know, I didn't do anything physical to them. When I got them on their own, their demeanour was very different to when they were in a group. They were actually terrified of me. I did threaten them, you know, and you know that once I'd been in contact with all these people's individuals, and I knew the threat wasn't there, I handed myself into the police. And you know, like I say, like the police were actually great with me. They were like, you know, they were very, basically what happened is he says, listen, it's either you or your dad that's getting the blame for this. And my dad was actually being like, listen, son, I'll take the blame for this. My dad's an amazing guy, and I said to him, and I knew he wouldn't accept if I said like no, I'm taking the responsibility for this. So I mean, this is probably the you know, to be honest, I lied to him. I says that's fine, Dad, you take the responsibility. I said I'm going to go and let them know. But I went in and I said to the police, I went, it wasn't my dad, it was me. You know, and the police were very supportive. They treated me very fairly. You know, they were lovely. And I went up to court. The you know, the sheriff said to me at the time, you're either very dangerous or you're very naive. And he obviously seen something in me, gave me another chance. I got community service, and you know, dodged a big bullet there. It could easily have been a sentence. And I think if I went into jail, I wouldn't have got out. But things didn't stop there. Like I'd ended up with getting in situations where I was in bother. You know, it ended up that the last one that I was in bother for, things escalated. Like, you know, it's kind of like you're moving up levels. And I wasn't involved in organised crime. I wasn't an organised criminal, but I was getting in fights with people who were like, you know, like involved in that. And I got to a point, wrong place, wrong time. You know, I ended up getting an altercation with a guy who was, you know, he was serious like that. He was like, he wasn't just threatening to kill me. Like he would have if he got the chance. And before you knew it, I'd actually had a shotgun pointed at me, and you know, I ended up went to court. I ended up in being up for possession of a firearm at court. Now, at this point, my ex-partner at the time was pregnant with my son. I was about 23 at this point. And there's a much longer story to this, and I'm not going to take up too much time. But, you know, I will do a longer video on it. This is part of the coaching I do in schools. I was up for the firearm, and with my background, you know, I was looking at a serious charge under the Firearms Act. So I went up to court, and the sheriff was in a really bad mood. You could just tell he was putting people in jail left, right, and centre. He jailed a guy 2 years for smashing a car window. Granted, he was out on bail. He was just in a really bad mood. And I was like, I'm going down here. And I was looking at 7 years in jail. So I was looking at missing the first 7 years in my son's life. It gets to about 3:30 in the afternoon. My lawyer didn't show up. So this other person was drafted in. I pled guilty to try and get a reduced sentence. And it was 3:30 in the afternoon. I was the last person to get seen in the court. So I go up, and I'm in front of the judge, and you know, the prosecutor comes up and says, you know, this comes under the Firearms Act. It's a registered firearm. You know, it's a main component. And the judge says to the prosecutor, goes, what makes this a firearm? Oh, it's registered. And I went, but what's the mechanism in it? And she went, oh, it's got a spring mechanism that deploys a flare. And they went, well, where's the flare? And they went, well, we've not got that, but we've got the component. And they went, but what is it in this that makes it a firearm? It says the spring trigger. And he looked at his pen and he went, but my pen's got a spring in it. And then she was like, I know, but that's a registered firearm. He says, I don't care. He says, get him out of here. This is ridiculous. He says, he said to me, that, like, case admonished. And I looked at the lawyer and I went, what does that mean? And he says, nothing, you're free to go.
Wow.
And like, my son was due in like 2 months. And like, I don't know what happened. Like, that's like the most surreal experience ever. Like, because I should have, like, I won the lottery that day, like I did, and I've not been in trouble since. A big turning point was being a dad for me.
Yeah.
Most, like,
do you feel
most
like
important.
That was the point where really your journey to healing sort of came from? This was the turning point.
Yeah, I think that you know, when you're given a hand like that in life, you know, whatever way you want to look at it, like you can't ignore that. Like I won the lottery that day, and you know, that was the start of my journey to my own development, my own healing, and bettering myself. And it's still an
Wow.
ongoing journey. Like that was
So
14
what
years
did you do
ago.
after that? What you know, what were you did you have a mentor, a coach, or you know, were you still continuing with the MMA, or what did you do then?
So I had a coach in MMA, and you know, at the time, you know, I was very much in it. I was still dealing with a lot of the trauma, the anger, and the it's a very extreme sport. Obviously, I found the most violent, most extreme sport to participate in, and it was an effective outlet for me. Throughout most of my career, my professional career, I I managed and built my own team and coached myself, so which is quite unusual. Things weren't working out at the gym that I was at, and I created my own team and pursued and just like figured out myself. And I'm like that anyway. But you know, along the way, there's been people who have helped me and supported me, and you know, and you know, gave me opportunities when things have been tough.
So is this when you'd started up the gym, and this is New Life Gym, is that correct?
Yeah, so I started up New Life Gym, and I started off as a small club. So it was about 2009. I had no money. You know, things were better, but they weren't going great. I was in the, you know, verge of becoming homeless again. I'd been homeless before, and you know, I really wanted to build my own thing, and things weren't working out with my team at the time. So I got a scout hall, hired at a hall, bought 4 judo mats. I had 200 quid to start that my dad gave me. So I bought like a laptop and flyers, and I just put myself out there. And you know, I, you know, I, I had no template to do it. It was didn't really have like MMA gyms in, and I just went, right, I'm going to do it. I started it. Had opportunities to coach in other gyms, and then about 2013, 2014, through a really challenging experience and a really difficult set of circumstances again, I managed to get into a unit, get my own unit, and ended up, you know, kind of homeless again. You know, it was just the nature of it. You know, that I was taking risks. I was like going into business at that point. I had no business background, no financial input. People were helping me. Like, don't get me wrong, I had some really nice pals I'm forever grateful for. You know, what they've done for me, and they've been able to get me in that unit, give me a good start, and then, you know, that's where I met my my now wife, and who's now business partners with me in New Life Gym. And you know, it was probably, I would say, when the real healing took place, I would say that was in 7 years ago, let's say 2015, because that's when I really started to study psychology. Like martial arts was doing something for me, and I knew it was, but I also knew on the horizon that's not always going to be there. So I had to find other ways. I noticed I wasn't coping with certain situations, which you would now understand as triggers. Like I was, you know, had triggers with certain situations, and then once I started studying the mind, you know, language, more started looking at my own behaviour, and particularly when I looked at myself, you know, that's when the substantial changes started to happen. And now I'm in a really fortunate situation where I can mould and model that with martial arts and help deliver that, and you know, support people with that. And that's why New Life Gym is called New Life Gym, because martial arts changed my life for the better. But now we have an even better opportunity. We don't just have martial arts, we have behavioural modelling methods. We have sports therapists. We have, role models, coaches, mentors. So young, and we learn every day from the people we are surrounded by as well. So I've got mental performance coaching, which I'm the director of. We work in schools. I've got all these amazing opportunities to develop and continue to develop myself.
And see, in terms of these opportunities and these people and the sort of support network, was that the kind of support that you had that really helped you to, well, you said that you were studying psychology and you began to discover language and how that like impacted you, and was that the trigger, or what triggered, like how did that all come about for you? How did you come to realize that there really was something here, in terms of like practices, or maybe mentors or coaches or anyone showing you or teaching you, or how is this process that for you?
Well, initially I was, I remember I had a really adverse reaction to someone who was manipulating me about 7-8 years ago, and I couldn't understand, why they were like that, and that led me to look at myself and go, why am I reacting so strongly to this because other people weren't? And then, I started looking at different things, I started like just research. I remember I got into I was researching like Buddhism, I was researching philosophy, and then I was researching different religions and stuff and belief systems. And then, when philosophy then transferred into, taking a keen interest in psychology, it was more of a natural. There was people like nudging me, like subtly, I think, in directions anyway. However, I was very much, like I said, like how I felt like I'd done things my own way. It's like I went looking for the answers, and I found them, and now I'm getting more accurate at finding those answers. So I would say like my support network, my friends, my students. I've got students who are friends of psychologists, doctors, people who are specialists, psychiatrists, counsellors. One of the, believe it or not, and this is what why like was really interesting. It was actually working in schools. Like, obviously I was at difficulties in schools, and the kids I work with, it was through the kids and the opportunities I got from teachers in schools. Like, I started, like, that's where I started really making the developments and learning, because I was in a real, like, through Mastering Art of Childhood, we work with kids who are struggling in the education system. I had to make sure that I was doing the best by them. I didn't want to make any mistakes. And that's when I really got into like studying big time. I didn't go to university or anything like that. That academic setups aren't suited to me, so I done it in my own way. And it was really, I would say, working in schools, and particularly one of the people that gave me the start. Her name's Martine. Martine is the head teacher at Crawford, and she went, Davey, like, I think you can help some of my kids. And actually, by going in and working with the kids and supporting the kids, like, I remember, like, I was in a room with like 4 or 5 kids, and I was like, how come I'm the only one that's not dyslexic here? And then I thought, oh, wait a minute, I better check. So it turns out, yeah, that was how I found out.
Wow.
But the real developments, I'd say, like, and I went back to school as such. Like, I'm back in school as an adult, and there is great teachers out there. There's amazing people, really taking, really looking at things the way, like-minded, like ourselves. Like, what impact does our language have? What impacts our behaviour have? Like, how do we look at things differently and make positive changes?
So, Mastering the Art of Childhood, that's the programme that you delivered in schools. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
Yeah. So what kind of things do you, so say you have a group of children there, what kind of things would you do with the children? How would you help them with any difficulties that they were having?
So we've developed a model called mindful martial arts. Mindful martial arts is one approach we would take. Now, mindful martial arts is an effective way of delivering mindfulness content without lowering the risk of potential triggers or kids, you know, who maybe are struggling with the traditional methods of mindfulness of, you know, sitting down and relaxing. They could be more inclined to using martial arts as a vehicle. So we show them we show them mindfulness through martial arts, which is kind of cool because that's something that they want to do, and they learn how to regulate through that. Just by martial arts gives you little stressors, but it's not traumatic enough where it will challenge you emotionally, and you know, bring, you know, maybe our own little challenges to the surface, and in a way that it's enjoyable, in a way that they like, in a way that's kind of cool, and you know, and we have, as Todd and myself, our partners in the business. Todd's a fantastic guy. You know, to put Todd in front of kids is a real privilege, and you know, and particularly in schools, a very female-dominated environment. So it's for us, it's a real privilege to be able to be strong, solid, you know, male role models for particularly a lot of young boys that we work with. So we have our mentorship programs, you know, where we help support and mentor them through the challenges they're facing without judgment. You know, we're not teachers, we're not an education system, so we can have conversations with them that teachers might not be able to have. And again, the teachers know that when they bring us in, and it's great to see that, you know, an experience that, you know, that there's a lot of amazing teachers out there who really care, and they are looking out for kids in a selfless way, like superheroes. Like they'll never know. I tell the kids, they're like, oh, you know, teacher kind of annoys me, but I was like, they say amazing things about you, and you know, when we're chatting, like they're really, and especially Martin, is she's an amazing human being, and I've been privileged enough to work with a lot of schools, and they, you know, I've had great experiences. And when someone gets involved with us, they're not in it for the right intentions. You know, they want what's best for the kids, and they're willing to do something that
It
bit
can have a
different
huge
outside the box.
impact. Has a huge impact on children. I like, in similar, like we have similar crossovers in a couple of areas, like especially with like working in the schools with the children as well. And like I find that, and even just that notion alone, like you said, you share with the children that, oh, you know, your teacher behind your back is saying all these good things, you know, like if you're like yourself, if you grow up in an environment where there's a lot of violence and there's a lot of, you know, derogatory language often used, and you often wonder whether the things that are being said behind your back are, you know, attacks and like sort of malicious sort of things. The idea that actually someone's got your back when you're not there is actually a real confidence booster, and I think that's like for adults as well, like not only children. So yeah, the fact even that you do that, I think is great. It's like all of these small things, isn't it, that, you know, sort of help children to just like feel supported and feel a bit stronger and more confident in themselves.
Totally.
So how do you feel, like in terms of looking at that sort of healing journey and, you know, where you are in your life now, how would you say that manifests in, like, not only in yourself now, but also with those that are around you, the type of environment that you're in? How has that supported that? How does that look for you now?
I'm in a very good place in my life just now, mentally, physically, relationships. You know, I always know that things can go bad and they can go really bad, so it allows me to remind myself and remind others about me, like, you know, when things are good, you know, how privileged we are, and you know, and this isn't just like me being positive or anything like that, like, because things can go bad in life as well. It's not like that's part of life, but how we deal with it is much better. And always, you know, when I'm working with people in mental performance, when I'm working with kids, and that's how I'm so honest about my story. Like, that was like, I kept that secret for years, like, but I'm just dead honest now. Like, I'm like, this is who I am. This is the mistakes I've made, and you actually find that people are like oh, I can open up to you, have a conversation. Another thing as well, when I say these things, like I realize, like, I'm not that important in the grander scheme of things. Like when I've came out and been honest about my past, people have been so supportive. Like, and that's a big thing that I feel that I've had positive feedback on, or people have really turned it around themselves. They went, "You've been so honest with me about yourself," and that's been like, I think for a lot of people that I've connected with through those experiences, that's really like inspired them to make positive changes. So I think like having that honest environment where we can all, have conversation about, you know, our, ourselves and share our stories is very effective for, for development, improvement.
Absolutely. No, I absolutely agree. I think creating that safe space and communicating truthfully about how we think, how we feel, things that we see, experience, like from our own perspectives, I find is what really creates that connection. I know for me, going through similar experiences, and I say similar in terms of violence, especially, and language and things like that. There was a fear about telling the truth about how you think and feel and see, for what might happen in return, and for sharing that. So, being vulnerable and opening up and actually talking about these things creates a space where, oh my gosh, it's safe for me to actually express, how I feel and how I think and how I see, which just, it creates bonds, connections, builds relationships, and really strengthens you. And like you say, gives you that support when you share it. So that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So I'm noticing that we're coming up for the time here. So I thought, if there is like one thing that you sort of really want to leave with either children or those who are supporting children with trauma, in regards to, language, communication, and sort of overcoming the trauma of violent communication, what would you share? What would be your message? Or
I asked a friend of mine a question. A friend's a head teacher, Karen's her name. Again, amazing person, doing a great job. Like, she's fantastic at what she does, and a really interesting person as well. And I'd asked her one day when we'll have these long conversations on the phone and stuff, and about the work that we do, and I'd asked her, I says, if back in the day we were hitting children with belts and we thought it was okay, what do we not know now? And we do have a decent understanding of, like the impact that, the impact of things that we do and behaviour and all these type of things and trauma. But I do think that led me to my own conclusion as well, is the nuances of language and how we use it. And I think that is something that a lot of us don't fully understand, myself included in that, like the actual impact that words can have, particularly on children who are, more pliable than us, easier to be molded than us. They are sensitive to words and gestures and communication, and the more I understand about language now, and the more I understand about how we communicate, and the impact it can have is remarkable. It can be used as a weapon, and it can be used as a tool. And I think that if there was anything that really led to my experience, a lot of it, regardless, I actually think the language that was used in front of me or towards me was more damaging than the physical violence. Think about how it all started. Someone threatening me, I'm then going to escalate. It's been conditioned over years and years. Like, like, in all facets of life as a kid, like, and how, like, for example, if we are, want to get a desirable behaviour from a child, is understanding, and learning. There's multiple ways. There's loads of different ways we can do it through language. But again, like myself, if we get into an aggressive state, it's because we're running out of tools ourselves. It's like when we get into aggression, or we use aggressive language, or passive aggressive language, it's because that we are struggling to find the tools or the way to address the situation that could be more effective. But there's like the contents out there, and actually it's something that I'm setting up myself just now. I'm going to be doing an online course at the start of next year, and this will be one of the topics, is sharing some of my methods and techniques with regards to language and how damaging it can be, but also how effective it can be. And I'd just like to give a couple of examples before we finish things up. Obviously, I corner athletes, amateur and professional athletes. If I put someone into a cage and I say to them, listen, you're probably going to lose this fight, like, they're probably going to lose the fight. If I say to them, like, you know, you can do this, I believe in you, I'm right behind you, the chances of winning the fight is dramatically increased. I worked with a client about 4 weeks ago, and she's a boxer, she's a friend of mine and a coach of mine and a student, and I done language-based coaching with her, and we measured her punching power. She went from punching a certain force. Like prior to that, I done some language-based coaching with her, and her punching power and volume increased by 12%. Wow. Which is huge in sport.
Yeah.
I've got it all measured, and I've got it stored. I'm going to do that study over and over and over again, just by words alone. 12% is huge in amount of power and force that she generated. And actually, the next week she went on to win a title that, like, she played an absolute blinder of performance.
Amazing.
But like words have a huge impact. They really do on outcomes.
Absolutely. So, I found that, like, as a storyteller, and you know, I write like children's books and, well, adult books now, actually, self-help books. Wow. But I find one of the things in my own journey of healing was the power of words, how language influences behavior, you know, and how when you speak to a higher potential of self, you tend to bring life to that aspect of yourself. You're able to become more, do more, create more, experience more as a result of, you know, positive language that actually speaks to that higher potential. And like you say, you know, with language that, or violent communication even, that, you know, criticizes, sort of downgrades, speaks to like a sort of, I guess, a lower potential, you know, a potential that's actually lower than what you're capable of, you tend to, you know, give up and sort of just settle into, rather than try and rise up to match, you know, that vision that's been painted for you. So I'm a huge supporter of the power of words and the power of communication and language, and especially for, you know, pushing, mentoring, coaching, you know, helping to, like, children and adults to, you know, reach their potential and actually fulfill that and succeed in life. So yeah, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for being here, David. I really appreciate everything that you've shared. You. And thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks so much for the opportunity, and I look forward to having a look at some of your books and seeing more about what you're doing and how your story unfolds as well. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. Thank you, David, and I'll talk to you again soon. So thank you so much for tuning in for our episode today with David Galbraith. Like I shared, I'm a huge believer in the power of language and communication, especially to reach your full potential. To watch any more of these episodes, please come along and join us at thefairyshow.com. We'll see you soon. Thanks for joining us on the very first episode. Take care for now.
Of this beautiful land, but a rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this beautiful land, but you are in a rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this beautiful land, but the beauty a rich man's world. A rich man's world. Beautiful land, but you are in a rich man's world. I have turned the soul of this beautiful land, but you are in a world. Have the soul of beautiful land, but you a rich man's world.